Cut Through podcast. I'm Simon Bohr, and this is how to communicate with clarity in a noisy world. Welcome to the Cut Through podcast. I'm Simon Bohr. This week, I want to explore how our brains process reality and the consequences this has for communicators. The philosopher Peter Singer developed a thought experiment for his students. Imagine your route to university takes you past a shallow pond, he said. One morning, you notice that a child has fallen into the pond and appears to be drowning. You could easily wade in and save them, but if you do, then your clothes will get muddy. Your shoes will almost certainly be ruined. Should you save the child? Unsurprisingly, the response of his students was unanimous. Are you insane? Of course you should save them. The cost of replacing your shoes shouldn't even be a consideration. Okay, said Peter. Now imagine another scenario. You're going shopping to buy a new pair of shoes, but the money that you spend could save the life of a child if you donated it to a charity to provide life-saving medicine. Is your moral obligation any less just because the child is farther away? Isn't saving their life more important than buying a new pair of shoes? The experiment is designed to raise questions about ethics and moral responsibility, but I think it also reveals something fundamental about how we process information and why some communications fails. We are not rational beings. Proximity, emotion, and the vividness of seeing something happening to a real person close to us carry far more weight in our minds than facts, data, or abstract reasoning. We are moved more by a single identifiable victim than by millions of anonymous deaths. We like to think of ourselves as rational beings. Being emotional can even be a term of abuse, and yet the truth is that human beings are not rational calculators weighing up the pros and cons of each option. We rely on mental shortcuts, also known as heuristics. These let us make decisions quickly with minimal effort, but they also introduce predictable biases. And for communicators, if you want people to act, then you should design messages that work in tandem with these fundamentals of human psychology. The development of heuristics probably gave our ancestors a survival advantage. The human brain is bombarded with more sensory information than it can possibly process consciously. We receive signals from our eyes, ears, skin, nose, taste buds, muscles, even our internal organs. The raw fire hose of data from our eyes alone might be as much as 10 million bits per second. Contrast that with estimates for the conscious processing power of our mind, just 40 to 60 bits per second. And so our brain relies heavily on filters, shortcuts, and habits. In fact, we don't see reality at all. We see a filtered, constructed version that is optimized for our conscious mind to take action. If you want a quick example, then flick your eyes from left to right or vice versa. You should see a blur of motion as your eyes move, but you don't. The brain edits it out in real time And although you may never have noticed it, your vision is briefly suppressed between your 2 points of focus. Your eyes are still sending your brain a flood of visual data, but the brain just skips the messy frames to stitch together a neat and stable picture. You don't see reality. What you see is the edited highlights. Even more incredibly, the brain doesn't just filter things out, it adds them in. Each eye has got a natural blind spot where your optic nerve connects to your retina. There are no photoreceptors there at all, meaning no data is reaching your brain. But you don't see a black hole floating around. Your brain fills in the gap using the surrounding detail and pattern. You're literally seeing something that isn't there. Our brains are built to prioritize certain sensory threats, opportunities, and patterns that mattered most historically for our survival. And these usually serve us well even today, but they also create predictable biases that should be understood by communicators. Let me give you some examples. Salience and contrast. We are naturally drawn to what stands out from the background, such as bright colors, unusual shapes, or hard edges. And this once helped us to spot fruit or predators in the undergrowth. Today, communicators exploit this through high contrast visuals or bold design. See the cut-through logo, for example. Another example would be face detection. This was vital for a social species, being able to identify expressions of anger, fear, or joy in a fraction of a second helped us to cooperate with allies and avoid threats. We even have a specialized neural network for detecting faces, and we sometimes see them even where they do not exist, such as in clouds or plug sockets, even burnt toast. Faces in communication capture attention immediately and they trigger emotional responses in us. Another example would be what's known as gestalt grouping. Our brains assume patterns and complete missing information. So we group objects that are close or similar in shape and size and moving in the same direction together. Historically, this probably helped us to identify a herd rather than individual shapes and allowed us to make faster decisions. Today, logos and infographics exploit the rules of grouping. Think about the IBM logo, for example. It's just a series of lines, but our brain groups it together into 3 letters. The final example would be emotional vividness. We prioritize stimuli that were most relevant to our survival, such as children, animals, or visceral danger. The cost of overreacting to a rustle in the bushes or a twig snapping was low compared to the cost of missing a predator, and that bias still drives our attention today. So what? You might imagine that human traits like these are becoming less relevant as we move further away from the environment in which they evolved. But actually, you'd be dead wrong. The algorithmic social media environment that we operate in rewards exactly these features. So using and understanding behavioral science in communications matters not just because it's how humans are hardwired to respond, but also because it is what social media algorithms have learned to exploit. In a low trust, high speed media market, the competition for attention is being won by those communicators who know how to harness these dynamics. If attention is scarce, then design your communication to work with the grain of human perception, not against it. If our brains work on shortcuts, then design your strategy for them. Communications such as dense government statistical reports or evidence-based policy arguments are important, but they won't be how most people make a decision. Communicators need to design messages that work intuitively first and then back them up with rational evidence. And communicators who use the principles well can cut through, build loyalty, and change behavior. For example, encouraging people to eat more fruit and vegetables with 5 a day was an example of communicators creating an intuitive mental shortcut that made it easier for people to opt for healthier choices. Next week, I'm going to rank the top 10 behavioral science techniques that I think can give communicators an advantage. Things such as loss aversion, social proof, anchoring, authority bias, and nudge. And in future, I'll also share some practical tools that make it easy to incorporate some of these behavioral science principles into your communication. Let me know which elements of behavioral science you're interested in and would like me to write about by leaving a comment. Until then, thank you for reading or listening, and please do subscribe if you haven't already, and share with other communicators who want to cut through the noise.